And welcome back to Mean Streets, the podcast where we talk about the best, worst, and forgotten movies of film noir and more. And today's a little bit of the more. We are your cinematic sleuths. I'm Luke Deckard,
I'm Matthew Booth.
and we are here with another Mean Streets Live. Another Mean Streets Live. So it's a different animal, it's a slightly different animal, more off the cuff, stuff.
Yep.
But
Yep.
Matt, we wanted to our first Mean Streets Live, we talked about a couple of things, but one of those being Daredevil Born Again, the first couple of episodes. But we thought, hey, the show's over with, ended yesterday.
Yep.
Why don't we do another one of these bad boys and share our thoughts on Daredevil Born Again season 1?
Why not? Why not? Looking forward to this. It'll be good fun.
Yeah. We can sort of recap a little bit because this is more of a Daredevil centric episode. But I was a huge fan of the Netflix series.
Yeah.
I when that to me, when the Netflix show dropped, that just was, it kind of remains, I think, my all-time favorite thing that MCU Marvel has ever done, because it was dark and gritty, but had good comedy, but felt real, felt gritty, felt the world felt lived in, and there was weight to actions in that Netflix series, and gave us by far the best on-screen Daredevil to date, and also Punisher. Punisher is fucking awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. It'll be an easy show for me if you carry on saying things like that, Luke, because there's nothing I can say against that. I agree with every word.
Well, I mean, there were things I definitely disliked about some episode. Well, not episodes.
Nothing
but
is perfect.
Elements.
Nothing is perfect.
Elektra was a. I never gelled with Elektra. I didn't gel with her storyline in season 2. But then she sort of redeemed herself a little bit in the Defenders, and it's something that we did is recently, well, not recently now, but earlier this year, we went back. My wife and I went back and rewatched all of season 1. Not season 1, but all 3 seasons of Daredevil, and to prepare for Born Again, and we left out the Defenders. We got to the end of season 2, and I thought, you know what? I remember watching the Defenders. I remember not really caring that much about it when it was on, and thought, yeah, we'll just skip it. We'll just skip it. So we skipped it. But once Born Again started going, I thought, you know what? I think I want to go back and rewatch the Defenders. And I was kind of annoyed at myself, actually, that we didn't include that as part of our big rewatch, because I was like, oh no, this isn't as for some reason I had a memory of it just being bad, and I think that stemmed from what's the Iron Fist. His show was bad, his character was really boring, the actor, I'm sorry, just didn't work for me. But because then what happened, I thought, I forgot Luke Cage he's freaking awesome, and I thought, oh yeah, I remember. I like Jessica Jones, and so now I'm also watching seasons 2 and 3 of Jessica Jones, which I never watched seasons 2 and 3 of Jessica Jones. Season 1 I was kind of one and done with her for some reason, and I think it boils down to, at the time, just the oversaturation, because you have all these Netflix shows coming out, you have all these Marvel films coming out, you have everything else that you're doing in your personal life, and just certain things just fell by the wayside. And I think that's kind of what happened. But
I have to say, I feel like that if I watched all of this stuff, I'd never get out of the chair, and I'd just become molded to the armchair, and my eyes would just be TV screens, I'd never do anything else. So I am a bit more picky than a lot of people are, and I chose Daredevil because I used to love the comic as a kid, and I was never that interested in Luke Cage or what's he called? Iron Fist, whatever he's called.
Iron Fist.
Never that interested in any of those. They were all sort of C-list to me. But Daredevil I used to love, because I always more so than Moon Knight, really. I always thought this was Marvel's equivalent of Batman. This is Marvel's rival for Batman.
Yeah.
So I grew up with Daredevil. From a kid on, I remember the red and yellow suit even.
Ooh,
So
ugly red and yellow suit.
yeah,
Ugly.
yeah, nowhere near as good.
It's bad
So
in the comics and it was bad in She-Hulk. I'm sorry, the red and yellow
oh,
suit is bad.
it don't make well. I mean, it makes a certain sense because doesn't he make it out of his dad's? Well, in the comics, he makes it out of
I
his
think
dad's
it's based off his dad's
boxing robe.
colors.
But
Yeah.
that robe has to go a long way to cover an adult man. But yeah, I never really understood why he wasn't just red from the outset. Really, it makes more sense. So I missed all the Defenders TV series. I missed the Luke Cage series. I missed all those because they just didn't do anything for me.
Yeah.
But Daredevil was, I mean, that was something else. And like you, I loved it. I've just watched the first series again, and I bowled over by how good it is. Again, how good it is.
Yes.
Because it is dark and gritty, and it's what Daredevil should be. I mean, the film is not. No. And this is Daredevil. This was the Daredevil as a child. Even this is the Daredevil I wanted to see.
Yes,
and
but this is Frank Miller's Daredevil. This is This just is Daredevil.
Just is Daredevil. Yeah.
They nailed it with the with that the first Netflix series just I think nailed it. I was never a fan of the Ben Affleck stuff.
No.
That film is even at the time like X-Men was coming out, Spider-Man was coming out, but then these other films would come out like Fantastic Four and Punisher and stuff. And I was thought, even when they came out, I just looked down and thought, nah, I don't want no, those aren't real.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think I went to the pictures to see Daredevil, the Ben Affleck one.
Wow.
And thinking, well, no.
Yeah.
I won't be buying this when it comes out for the collection. You know what I mean? And but when this was just from the posters, when the TV series was announced, and just from like trailers and stuff, and just images that I'd seen online, you thought, now we're talking. This is more like it.
Yeah. No, I have the Netflix version. I have the action figure of Daredevil over there behind the screen. And but this was when Daredevil, the Netflix shows come out. This was back when Netflix actually pretended to care about physical media, and they released Daredevil seasons 1 and 2 on Blu-ray. And I was like, that's great. So and a couple others. There were a few shows that they were releasing physically. I was like, good. And I bought a few, and this was one of the ones that I bought. Now, when season 3 came out, all they did was a DVD box set of all 3 seasons. They never released it on Blu-ray, and I thought, fuck you, Netflix.
Yeah. Yeah.
Screw you.
Yeah.
But I still got it. So that means I have 2 versions of seasons 1 and 2, and then this DVD version of 3. But it's there's a part of me that hopes that Disney will also release Born Again on Blu-ray or 4K. They've done it with a few of their shows like Loki and a couple others. They did kind of special edition physical media releases, and I do hope that Born Again.
Yeah, I hope they do. I hope they do. I mean, I have very different thoughts about Born Again, but I hope they do. I hope they release it because I think it probably overall it deserves it. I think
it does, and I'm a big fan of physical media. I like to own the thing.
Oh,
so
me too.
For example, like one thing I didn't own, but I've sort of always wanted but never bit the bullet on was I loved the one-off series that they did called Wolverine and the X-Men. It's a fantastic cartoon. Came out, I can't remember when it came out. It's like in the 2000s period. I want to say like late 2000, like late early maybe 2008, 10, somewhere in that range. I can't remember the years now. But it's a fantastic season that sort of starts with the X-Men are all happy. then something happens and Xavier is gone and the X-Men fall apart and Wolverine basically comes back to try and bring them back together and trying to find out what happens. And then they start getting these messages from Xavier from like the future.
Yeah.
And it's this freaking great
I've
season
just Googled
of
that.
yes. What's the
And
year?
I
What year?
remember now I've seen it. I remember watching that. That was great. That series,
Yeah,
2009.
and
It was 2009.
2009, there we go. And it culminated with this fantastic end of hinting Age of Apocalypse is where we're going. And then they canceled it.
Yeah,
And it was like it's a perfect season of animated X-Men television.
yeah, it is.
It was just fantastic.
I loved
And I
it. Yeah,
loved it. And I, my kid, she's 2, so we're watching different things. She loves the Adventures of Superman. She loves Batman, the 90s Batman, the Bruce Timm stuff. She's really into
yeah.
that and whatnot. We've tried some different Spider-Man. Sometimes she's feeling it, sometimes she's not. But I thought, let's try Wolverine and the X-Men. I went to Disney Effin Plus, searched for it, and it's gone.
No,
They've taken for some reason they've taken it off. It
I don't
was
know why
on
they
there,
do
and
that.
now it's not.
Yeah, I don't
And
know
I
why they
thought,
do that.
God damn it. And so
Yeah,
I went straight to eBay and I bought the box set because it's like, you know what? It's stuff like that that irks me, especially when you have a platform like a Disney that literally owns the thing and they don't
yeah,
even put all of their stuff on the thing that they like come on.
yeah.
Come
That
on.
they own. Yeah, nuts.
Drives me nuts. Drives me nuts.
Yeah,
So again, I'm
crazy,
saying all this to say
crazy
I
stuff.
really hope Born Again gets a physical release because I want it in the collection, and I just think it's important for the preservation
Yeah,
of
absolutely. Well, I'm the
of
same as you.
things.
I'm the same as you. I'm a nerdy enough to like the fact that they look good on shelves, you
Mm,
know, and
yeah.
they're like a second book collection for me. So, I mean, I buy no Kindle, don't own a Kindle.
Mm.
Not saying anything
I have a
against
Kindle.
Kindles
That's
because
for the books I don't care if I
yeah, I'm
don't
not saying
care
anything
to.
against Kindles. I sell
Yeah.
a fair few books on Kindle, so I'm quite
Yeah.
happy with Kindles. But you can't beat a bookshelf that's got this.
No, no. I love my books. I
For
love my
me,
books.
it's a personal choice, but for me, so I'm like you. I'm a big supporter of physical media, and some of the shows we've done in the past where we've said, own this, have it in your collection. If I've
Mm,
not, if I've come across one that I've not got in the collection, like Love Lies Bleeding, you know,
yes.
uh, it's straight in the collection because I think it's
Yeah.
got to be it's got to be there. It's got to be a physical disc.
Yes. Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's because that's the thing. It's like I don't want to rely on the streaming because you never know when it's going to taken off, and you also never know when it's going to get edited and
edited, yeah,
changed.
yeah,
And that is something that has happened to things in the past. And I don't know if people remember this or not, but I don't know if people remember Flickster. That was the site that when you bought your films and they came with a digital release, you would download it and it would be on this site called Flickster, and you could go there to watch your downloads or watch your films. Annoyingly though, you could never download it to your computer. Therefore you were stuck with this being your way of watching your stuff.
yeah.
Um, I once did a callback because I think I was moving house, and so I ended up getting rid of a bunch of physical DVDs, thinking, oh, they're all on Flixster anyway, they're safe there. Foolish idiot. And then Flixster went under, and I was
Yeah,
like, what's going to happen to all these films? They're gonna go. They're gonna die. They're gonna get erased. And then what happened is Google came in and bought stuff, but the for in the way somehow in the transfer from Google to Flixster, um, not everything was allowed to move over. So
no,
I did, in the end, ended up actually losing a handful of films that I, shouldn't have lost because rights reasons and things like that. So despite buying it, despite owning it, you know, I then ended up not owning it because
yeah,
it's digital. I was relying on these third parties, and so it's like that. That's for me why I've become such a staunch supporter of the physical
yeah.
media side of things.
we were talking the other day about the original Star Wars cuts
Yes.
that I've got on as extras on the special edition DVDs. The first time the special edition DVDs came out, which is
Yeah.
God knows when that was now, 20 odd years ago, easily.
Mm.
And you were saying, well, you can't get those anymore. So
No.
it's I'd be gutted if I could never see the films that I saw at the cinema when I was 4, 6, and 9, whatever it was, that they came out.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my God. Yes. Yeah.
So I'd be gutted if I couldn't see those again. So I'm
Yeah.
a big believer in having physical media. I think it's an important thing to have.
Definitely. Well, that's been a bit of a tirade.
That was a tirade, wasn't it? Yeah. People didn't tune in for that, did they?
I guess we can finally start talking about Daredevil Born again.
Yeah.
Ballerino in the chat says, I don't know, OYE. I don't know what that says. I don't know. I'm dumb. Anyway, if you're saying hello, hello. If not, explain. Anyway, Born Again. I guess we could do a bit of a recap on certain elements of Born Again. So when this show was first announced, I was excited for about 5 seconds until they started saying that, oh, this is not going to be a continuation of the Netflix series. We're bringing Charlie Cox back, but we're not bringing anybody else back.
Yeah.
No original, no creatives who worked on the Netflix show are coming back. It's going to be a new thing. It's Born Again, and I was so pissed off at that.
Yeah.
And I just thought, what arrogance do you have, Marvel, to think, oh, we're gonna bring this show back that everybody loved, but
Everybody
actually
loved,
no, we're not gonna bring it back.
Yeah.
Like it's a fantastic example of not reading the room. People loved that show and they wanted that show to continue. They didn't want something else that just happened to have the same actor.
Well, I think that's arrogance as well, because
Yeah.
really, if you're not gonna do a continuation and you're gonna reboot it essentially, then I think you should reboot everything, and I think you should reboot the lead actor. Because that's almost saying we're not doing the same thing again, but it's patronizing. We will keep you happy because we'll keep Charlie Cox. Well, no,
Yes.
because if he's not going to do the same thing, I don't want to see Michael Keaton in like the Adam West Batman. You know what I mean? So if you're gonna, if you're gonna keep what I think is the best Batman, but put him in a comedy Batman, I don't want to see it. It's just it's arrogance and it's patronizing.
Yeah, yeah. So I was super unhappy about that. Like really, really unhappy about that. Now, so the show, one of the differences is that the show was meant to be more of a, I guess, they said it was going to be envisioned as a legal procedural show, and not be darker or as gory. And episodes feel more kind of self-contained, which again, I'm sort of like, what are you doing? Because one of the best things about the original series is that their series arcs were generally really good. I mean, that while I had issues with season 2, for example, that Frank Castle arc is fantastic. From
definitely
him chasing the Punisher to then representing the Punisher to then him getting out of prison. Like that was really good stuff, and was utilized sort of long form storytelling really well. And I thought that's Daredevil has like made its name on this stuff. What are you doing?
What you doing? Yeah, what you doing? And also, it would run the risk, or it certainly would, I think, fall into the trap of episodic TV, and what one story a week, which is fine for certain things, but what I loved about the first series Daredevil, the first run of Daredevil, is all those subplots and side plots that were still going on around the central story and that were just as interesting as the central story.
Yeah.
Overall.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so that every character's got agency and you're interested in all of the characters, whereas episodic TV, by definition, some characters are just broad brushstrokes.
Yeah. Well, there is a bit of a reset every episode. I mean,
Yeah.
you could go back and watch Star Trek TNG. You know, your first couple of seasons, you're sort of everything is an
Yeah.
instant reset, instant reset, instant reset. That's how it was made, so that you could jump on at any point.
But if you want to
But
tell sort of complex stories, which I think the first run was clearly doing, then it needs time to breathe, and it needs that,
yes,
you know,
yeah,
that series arc, as you
yes,
say. It needs that whole series to let the whole thing come to fruition. And
yes,
going to a more, episodic formula would have seriously weakened it for me, as would the suggestion that it wasn't going to be as dark and
yes,
as brutal.
yeah. So this show,
So
because
these initial sort of rumblings when it was first announced were making me think, well, I'm not sure I'll bother with this.
yeah, I was nervous. I was nervous because there was also planned for 18 episodes. So Daredevil went from being a 13 episode, 1 hour, 13 episodes of 1 hour each, to suddenly being an 18 episode thing. And I thought, oof, you're gonna do that thing where the episode is gonna say that it's like 40 minutes, but when you cut out the introduction, theme bit,
Yeah,
and then you cut the previously on bit, and then you have the 8 minutes of credits, you're probably gonna be left with like
yeah.
a 28-minute episode, which
25-minute show. Yeah,
which actually literally happens a lot with these Disney shows. I did it a lot with She-Hulk and Mandalorian, stuff like that. If you edit out those moments, the actual runtime of the show is 20-ish minutes long in certain cases, and it's a bit like what's the point of this? So that was interesting. But the actors seem to be the ones to more than anything were behind sort of salvaging the show,
yeah,
because it seems like Vincent D'Onofrio wasn't happy with what they were doing with Kingpin. Um, John Bernthal wasn't happy with Daredevil, with not Daredevil, with Punisher, and said, "I'm not coming back."
yeah.
Um, they weirdly recast the actress who played Vanessa, and she's on record as saying, I don't know why I don't know why I was recast. It didn't make any sense to me. Um, so it just seemed like whatever the hell was going on initially with this was a disaster. And I do sort of wonder if when some of these other shows like She-Hulk or whatever were coming out and the response wasn't good,
No.
if the money men and women behind Disney said, maybe this needs to be closer to what the people want."
Yeah. Let's just wait a minute and see. Tech stock. I think so.
Yes.
I think so.
But the problem is that one problem that kind of reigns all over Born Again is that happened, I think, a little bit too late, because
Mm.
it wasn't until production was underway, where they were literally filming stuff, that there was this sort of, oh shit, this isn't gonna work. We have to backpedal seriously.
And pretty
Um,
quickly.
and quickly, because they needed to reshoot a bunch of stuff, rejig a bunch of stuff, and therein lies kind of one of the big issues with this series. But we'll hold off on getting into in the
We'll hold
nitty
off
gritty
on
of
that,
that
Paul.
just too
Yeah.
quickly. But
Yeah.
in the chat real quick, Valerie, he was saying hello. He's saying hello, hello, hello. He also
Hello.
he or she or they, that I don't know who you are.
And
Valerino
thanks for being here.
says yes. This individual says they finished Born Again and they are confused. Frank, he goes, is Frank go solo against everyone, the police, or the police went to Frank's base? No, Frank went to, at the end of the episode where Frank goes and gets and confronts all those cops. He went solo to where the cops are based, and that's that port, that free port that Fisk and Vanessa have been using. That's their base of operations, where Daredevil says they are trying to create a free, kind of a free police state of some whatever he said.
Yeah.
That's where they went. Now I have to admit, if we're gonna jump ahead a little bit, I thought it was a little bit reckless of Frank to just walk in there like that. That
Mm.
given what we've seen of Punisher already, it's like
Yeah.
I don't think he would have just walked in like
I
that. I
don't think
think
he
he
would
would
either.
have gone in a bit more stealth and wiped them all out.
Yeah, with a bit
Um,
more caution.
yeah. Just walking in there like that was was not it 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 worked enough, but it was sort of like, I don't know. Also, James Benmore is here and says, "Hello, lads. Hello,
Hello,
James.
James. Good to see you, as it were.
Yes, yes. So yeah, so okay, we can get back into it. So season one is a mixed bag, but I have to admit, I really was taken by the first two episodes, which we spoke about
Mm.
previously, but we can sort of recap here. I think you can very clearly see the seams of where the new is being stitched up with the old, where the reshoots are being stitched in.
Yeah, you can, and
I.e.,
that's one of my problems with it.
yeah, all of the stuff at the beginning with Karen and Foggy is wonderful, and I love
Mhm.
it, and it's great seeing them back. Um, but the scene in Josie's bar where Foggy is talking to Kirsten and Cherry's there, and you're meant to feel like you know who they are, but you really don't, and the
You don't.
episode in general doesn't really give you a sense of who they are. That was one of those big glaring signs of, "Oh, okay, these were the characters who they wanted were probably in the original draft before they were forced to bring back Karen Page and Foggy Nelson." And
Yeah,
I mean, rightfully so, they needed to bring those back because,
rightfully so.
and I think also they wanted to bring back they wanted to bring back Bullseye as well.
Mm.
And while did Bullseye necessarily need to be back? I don't think so. I think that's one thing that they probably could have left alone. And because even recently the former showrunner from Netflix said they always wanted to bring Bullseye back, but it would have been at least a season later. And I
Mm.
I do have to agree with that
I think I agree with
idea.
that.
Yeah,
I think
because
I
they
agree
sort
with
of
that.
rush into him and they have this big fight, and it's a good fight and it's exciting, but you are sort of thinking, well, last time we saw him at the end of season 3, he was arrested.
Yeah,
So how did he get out? Like, what's
yeah,
going on? I don't think
yeah,
he would have
exactly.
just got,
Just follow up on two things there. I'll take that one first. I mean, it just smacked to me of we need a good fight to open it,
Mhm,
and not really much else. And who can give us a good fight? Well, Bullseye can. So
yeah,
we'll just do that. And that's a
yeah,
bit, hesitate to say lazy, but it could have been. We could have had a good fight with just anybody, really.
yeah,
It didn't really have to be him. But going back to the bar scene, and talking about the seams being visible, some of that dialogue, when it's just Kristen and Cherry, is very much. It struck me as being that sort of dialogue you get in these generic American cop shows or
yes,
hour-long action shows like 911 or whatever it is.
yeah.
Where they're just sort of
Chicago PD.
Yeah, all that Law and Order and all those that
Yeah.
are just the same, and they're all sort of tinny dialogue, what a friend of mine calls tinny dialogue, in that it's words
Yeah.
that people say, but they don't actually say those words in that way and in that order. And
Yes.
but then when you know, and then there's a marked shift in the quality of it all later on
Yes.
that really does jar. You
Yes.
know, when you take it all into account. So
You
yeah, that
do. Yeah.
it's good they brought these characters back to
Yes.
stop all that, to stop the dialogue being like that all the time.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, there was a big overhaul. They went back and they started punching up a lot of the scripts to sort of sort this issue out. But kind of carrying on with with the bullseye stuff, they
Yeah.
don't explain the bullseye release until the final episode, and then or the final episode. Then you sort of realize, oh, this is how, and this is why Vanessa's sort of behind it, but this sort of the disjointedness of how long it took to get to that information, you can tell that that is also part of
Yeah.
this patchwork that they've had to do to sort of rejig this show, because clearly Muse was meant to be the big villain.
Yeah, obviously. It's as clear
Muse,
as day.
and
Yeah.
yes, and he is briefly introduced in episode 1 when he, goes to the book signing of Heather, the shrink who Matt has a fling with,
Mhm.
and he's introduced that one scene, and then we don't see him again for like 3 more episodes,
Yeah.
and then it's like, "Oh, there Muse is back, okay." And then we don't see him again until he's, like, gone, and you're like,
Yeah.
"Wow, wow." And this is I think when you look at sort of, the sort of the White Tiger storyline,
Mm.
y that was sort of the thing that was meant to set up Matt going after, or Daredevil going after, A, coming back, and B, going after Muse,
Yeah.
because his niece makes the comment that, "Oh, they killed him because he was, da 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 da, but he was also trying to investigate these disappearances." And, she gives a very easy piece of information saying all these girls go missing around this particular spot, blah, blah, blah. So that when she goes missing, Matt is able to find her very quickly, which, is fine. But if this had been Netflix Daredevil, Muse would have been the whole thing, and
The whole thing.
there would have been a dark and scary serial killer thread
Yeah.
throughout the whole show.
Yeah.
And what
And
Born
it
Again was doing at the beginning was, if in my opinion, they were spending too much time. Not that they were spending too much time, but they had the problem of they were juggling what to do with this Muse stuff that we've already filmed, and how do we re-inject the Fisks and make the Fisks very important, and bring Vanessa back in because she wasn't meant to be in this capacity. We got to refilm with a new actress and make her important, make this something. And so is as entertaining as those first couple of episodes are, that is the struggle, that I think that struggle persists throughout the whole series.
the whole series, it does. And it's very obvious, you know.
Mhm, sadly.
Um and the other thing about certainly the opening episode was for me there was too much, and I know this is to a certain extent this is necessary, but there was too much glib dialogue about, oh, we're a team and we do these things together, and
Mm,
look how far we've come, and between between Karen, Foggy, and Matt, and just
yeah.
sort of reminding us how good they were in the Netflix series.
Yes.
And I was thinking, you don't really need to do this because the majority of people watching will remember how good they were because
Yeah.
they were so good. There was a bit
Yes.
too, I suppose it's exposition, for want of a better word,
Yeah.
and just sort of reminding people, but also those who didn't watch the Netflix series, who for some reason might have just tuned in to watch this, like,
Yes.
without any prior knowledge, to fill in the blanks, as it were. And I
Yeah.
know to a certain extent that's got to be done, but it did strike me on occasions being a bit clumsy. Some of that
It
exposition dialogue.
it was, and I agree, but I think the reason for that is these guys weren't meant to come back, and this is where it's like,
Yeah,
they have quickly written a scene
it,
and quickly gotten them in so that and
it's
this is a patchwork problem.
it's a
They
symptom of
can't.
the same problem. Yeah, it's a symptom
Yeah,
of the same
because
issue.
they clearly don't have space to rewrite the whole series to include them in the whole thing.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah, yeah,
we are only getting this scene at the beginning, one scene of Karen, and then she's gone, and she doesn't come
yeah,
back until the final episode. And I swear, man, that final episode when Karen comes back and the main cast is Daredevil, Punisher, and Karen Page, is such And then of course, Fisk and Vanessa, you have this sense of, oh, we're back.
Yeah. Thank God.
And I think there's two reasons. One, we have a history with these characters and they're well developed already from Netflix. So it's that Force Awakens problem, I think, where the Lawrence Kasdan, and when they were writing the Force Awakens, said every time we tried to write uh you know the new characters and Luke was around, the original characters were more interesting and they were taking over, and so
Yeah.
we just had to write Luke out of the equation entirely. And I that's how Some of Born Again sort of felt with me a little bit there, because I was like, oh man, geez, these guys are so much, they're four-dimensional. Like,
Yeah.
compared to Cherry and compared to Kristen and compared to the character of BB, which I want to get into more detail on those in just a little bit. But finally getting back to the core cast of what this show used to be was like a warm blanket, a warm bloody blanket.
Yeah. But also a cold reminder of what we used to have, and this is my big problem with it. And this is almost a sort of diluted version of it, in
Yes.
almost every way, which we'll go on to other examples of that. But I had the same feeling. I had, seeing them back on screen together was just like, oh yeah, good, good.
Yeah.
But
Yes.
Didn't have that feeling all the way through necessarily.
No. I'm interested to see how this plays into season 2, which is filming now. And Karen is Karen is back. They've also announced that the actor who plays Foggy is back. So we'll see how that comes into play. Just a quick one in the chat. Vincey John, is this actually live or is it a recorded live? No, it is. We are actually live. This is as live as we can possibly be. So hello. Yeah. So it's okay. So another thing, and this is where again I think part of the issues come into play a little bit is I was very interested at first with the Fisk Vanessa therapy session stuff, and how that was going to tie into Heather's storyline and how she was sort of anti-mask and all that kind of stuff. Anti-vigilante, and I thought, oh, this has so much potential, but god damn, it's frustrating because it was so surface level and it's a shame, because I know at the moment I'm being very harsh on the show, but I guess it's just a shame because there was so many moments throughout the season where there are shining moments that I thought, if you just had more time, if this creative overhaul could have happened earlier on, you could have done something so interesting.
Special.
As much as I like the concept of Heather, she very much reminded me of Dr. Chase Meridian, whatever, from Batman Forever. Where it's like, okay, cool. Batman's new girlfriend is a shrink who's going to dissect this shit out of his mind,
out of his brain,
out of Bruce's mind. And I thought, oh, cool. We could do something fun with this with Daredevil. Great. They don't do anything with it. They have 2 or 3 kind of heavy-handed exposition moments where, she therapizes Matt, and we're just sort of like, yeah, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I know what you mean about Chase Meridian, actually. She's meant to be Chase Meridian. It always struck me that she was meant to be this sort of clever psychologist. She was meant to be like cutting edge psychologist, and the best you can come up with is that Two-Face uses a coin to decide what he's going to do.
Yes.
You think, well,
yes,
you're not that impressive, then, are you?
No.
And then she just becomes totally meaningless to the story. She just becomes a damsel in distress.
Yes. Which
I mean,
is, we can talk about that actually, because that really annoyed me. I was when we finally see one session with her with Muse, and it's like it's a big climactic moment in which he reveals that A, he is Muse, and B, he's obsessed over her, and C, he's going to murder her now and create art out of her, kind of thing, like really dark, sinister stuff. That I thought this is clearly the finale. This is what they
Yeah.
wanted the finale to be. And in some ways, I would have been okay with that if this season 1 was about, you know, let's say let's kind of do a bit of rewriting here. Let's say season 1 is about Matt getting over the death of Foggy, Karen disappearing, on out, Fisk taking over as mayor, but at the same time there's this serial killer who's doing what Muse is doing. And then Heather is working with this guy, but she's sort of freaking her out a little bit, but she's getting a little too close to the fire, and then bam, that is your thing. That's where your big climax of the season is, where he has to stop Muse. You're kind of your Silence of the Lambs moment, where you need to stop Buffalo Bill,
Yeah.
before he kills the next victim, and they've got the time is ticking. And that's where this should have gone.
Definitely.
And I think easily could have gone, but to incorporate the Fisk stuff properly and incorporate that as a series arc, you would have needed a more substantial overhaul of the whole thing.
Yeah, I think so. To put it in a simple way, and this would, although I say put it in a simple way, it's going to illustrate why it would be a major overhaul. I think keeping the original story as I understand it to have been, but writing it again from scratch with the sensibilities of the Netflix series, would have been a very rewarding return. But they'd filmed too much of it. They'd filmed too much of it to be able to do that. That's why it would be a major overhaul. But that's really what you're saying, isn't it? That it leads up to that very obvious and very, very fulfilling climax, with a very interesting character study for Murdoch of, can I live without being Daredevil? Is Daredevil needed?
Yes.
I don't want to do it anymore.
He's Daredevil forever.
God. And and just having that as the main plot would have been really good, but written in the way that the original series was written. But what we get is this, and we've said it before, and I fear we'll keep saying it: this hodgepodge of both, this patchwork quilt of both.
Sadly,
that isn't quite one or the other. Sadly, and it's a missed opportunity. But as you say, hopefully, series 2 will rectify. Will sort of wipe the memory of some of this.
I hope so, and I feel like maybe because they've had a lot more time to, because they've only just started filming. Very recently did they start filming on series 2, so they've had a lot of time to fix things and
they've
course
accepted.
Correct.
Yeah, and they've accepted that the way they were originally going wasn't going to be right. So I give them credit for that, because too often they don't realize, they don't accept what they've done is wrong. So I give credit for that and say, well, that's a step in the right direction generally for me.
Yes. Well, here's a big topic of conversation for Daredevil Born Again Series 5. Vincent says, I'm still trying to figure out what was the purpose behind the episode 5 with Kamala Khan's father. It had absolutely nothing to do with the storyline, and I'm so confused with it. Well, so was everybody.
Yeah.
Now, I watched that episode because the episode 4 ended so awesomely. It was that he's finally getting back into being Daredevil. He's going up to the roof.
He's training with the clubs.
It's fucking great. Yeah. You're like, and the thing where the thing shoots out of the thing and it shoots at the screen and it goes to black. You're like, yes, next episode, we're getting Daredevil.
Yeah.
That's what you think. And then it's just Matt rocking up to a bank being like, oh, I need money because my business is doing very well. What?
Yeah, what are you talking about?
Where did that come from? What do you mean you need a loan because your business isn't doing very well? That hasn't been set up in the first 4 episodes that we've been watching.
Yeah, no, what are you talking about?
Yes.
Yeah, what are you talking about?
Yes. And it became very obvious to me very quickly that this because Matt was the only actor from the show, regular in the show in this episode, I thought, this is an episode from the original run.
Yeah.
This gives you a hint of what the tone was going to be like.
Yeah.
And it's and they decided, hey, we can kind of salvage this without doing any rewrites, despite it needing a lot of
A
rewriting
lot of
to make
rewrites.
sense.
Yeah, a lot of
Because
rewrites.
even though we're going to get into it, the next episode, when Heather says something about, oh, you know, you've just had that bank heist situation, I'm like, that is clearly another old
That,
scene that
yeah.
they're just trying to make that pretend to matter. It just doesn't.
Or it's a bridging line, you know, to just
Something.
tie it in. It's something. But I think I if the question was what's the point of that episode, my answer is God knows, because it doesn't add anything to me.
Well, as we said earlier, the show was meant to be episodic, and that is an absolutely episodic episode of a TV show.
Could you take this episode out?
Yes.
Yeah. So that's what
Yeah,
that's
if you
what I
take
mean.
this, if you eject this episode,
I don't know why it's
any
in.
kind of
When,
rewatch, I will never ever rewatch this episode. I will absolutely skip episode 5 because nothing happens.
and
It
once they
stalls the
decided to
story
overhaul
completely.
it, once they decided to overhaul it, I don't know why this episode didn't like just disappear, because I don't think it needs it either. All it does,
I reckon time and money.
yeah, maybe. Yeah, maybe.
They didn't have time to rewrite a whole episode, and they thought, hey, there's this one episode. It's a heist episode. It's just Daredevil in the bank. We don't have to worry about anything else story-wise, but it's a fun little da-da-da-da-da. Because in theory, in concept, yeah, it's fun. You know, but in the execution and in its placement in this particular part of the series, it's not fun. It's like, what have you just done to me, show?
Yeah. Well, it might have been. I mean, well, in the context of all the other episodes, it's just a total tonal shift, and it's an unwelcome tonal shift.
Yes.
To me. And like you, I won't watch this episode again ever.
No.
Never want to see it again. And it's like, I think I've made this analogy before. It's like an off-key note in a symphony.
Yeah.
You know, it stands out a mile. But if this is, I think it does give a flavour of what the series would have been if the powers that be hadn't said, no, this isn't going anywhere. We're not doing this, because it does.
Well, the actors. I don't know how much of it was Disney more than the actors were like,
whoever the powers that be can be defined, whoever it was.
Yeah.
You know, I just think like the jokes are bad. It's too jokey. It's more like something I would expect to see in an MCU movie.
Yes.
Of latter years.
Yes.
And it's so at odds with the Daredevil that I had watched, the Netflix series, you know, and it's just a lame in a PG rated series, you know, in a sort of kid friendly superhero series, it'd be a perfectly fine episode.
Yes. Yeah.
In this, no.
Because Mr. Khan, his daughter is Kamala, who is Miss Marvel. They have a Miss Marvel TV show that's on Disney.
Yeah.
That is a kiddie, preteen, teen boppy kind of. That's its audience. And then she was also in the Marvels when they had the the sequel to Captain Marvel. She's also in there.
Yeah.
And she is, again, this sort of teen boppy. She's actually weird. Funnily enough, she is probably the least annoying thing in that Miss Marvel's movie. She's actually pretty good. but again, it is like trying to put The Office, the sitcom The Office, in an episode of, I don't know, Law and Order. It's like that. It doesn't work.
Yeah.
These are two different genres that if you're gonna mash them together, like there needs to be better adjustments, and the adjustments shouldn't come on at Daredevil's expense.
No, absolutely not.
Which is what this episode does.
Which is what it does. And this episode also, I think is justification for what I said earlier, which is if you're going to reboot it to be like this, don't have Charlie Cox in it.
Yeah.
Cast somebody else as Daredevil who is, you know, cast the equivalent of George Clooney as Batman, and have someone who is going to play it for a kid's audience, because that's what this episode is. That's what this episode does. It satisfies the sort of teenage boy, it's like an episode of the A-Team, you know what I mean? Or that just happens to have Daredevil in it, who is only in his street persona, not in the suit, as I remember.
Yes, which was also a really annoying aspect of this episode. I thought, you just had that badass scene. We saw this. We saw the cowls. He's up there practicing, and now we have this whole episode of him just sitting in a bank.
Sitting in a bank, as if he's thought, well, all that practice I was doing, perhaps I won't do it after all. Chronologically speaking.
Yes.
It was just, it's bad. It's a bad episode. Bad episode.
Yeah.
And a jarring episode, a really seriously jarring episode.
Yes. Yeah. I think it's a good point. If the show had remained episodic, maybe our reaction wouldn't have been so visceral. But even though we're saying the problems with the patchwork stuff is there, I was still really enjoying episodes 1, 2, 3, and 4. There were problems, but I was in it and I was enjoying it like 80% of it. I was enjoying, and then because this really just feels like being jerked to a stop suddenly, narratively speaking. I would have just cut the the problem is they probably had filmed it.
Well,
that's why.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was saying before. I'd have been quite happy if this was 8 episodes, not 9.
Yeah.
But they will have filmed, won't they? And they'll have spent money on it, and it'll need to be, to make the money men happy, it will need to be shown. And I think people just have to grit the teeth and get over it. Really.
Yes.
And just say, well, it's there, sort of thing. You never have to watch it again.
In the way that the series ignores episode 5, I think the audience needs to ignore it as well. I think you're right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Episode 6 does not barely acknowledges it except for one throwaway line. At no point does Kirsten ever say anything about how the partners, the firm needs money.
No.
That's the thing that cracks me up about that as well, because it's like, wait, in these episodes when we've gone to Murdoch's new firm, he's in a swanky office. He's got lots of people working for him.
He doesn't look as if he needs money.
He just needs money. Fuck off with that bullshit. Ugh, stupid. Now, in terms of the new cast, I think this is kind of the big difference, and we sort of touched on this earlier, in that when the original cast is on screen, it is captivating and it is rich and it is enjoyable. It is that warm, bloody blanket. And because of the overall, I do think a lot of the new characters fall very flat. I was very excited for this character of Cherry. I thought, cool, he's got this PI who's working for him, who's got ins at the police. He's going to come into play here. He's going to be a cool guy. He's fucking useless. And that's disappointing. It's disappointing. I'm disappointed because I liked concept of Cherry, but execution of Cherry, he doesn't. They clearly must have. If he had things to do, it was probably cut because of all of these rewrites and edits.
Yeah, I did get the impression that he was. I don't know how to say this. There was something more that we didn't see. Something more going on behind the scenes, as it were, that we didn't see. And I wondered if he was a casualty, and maybe he'll come into his own in the second series. I don't know.
Maybe.
But I quite like the idea. The sort of Perry Mason, Paul Drake idea of lawyer needing a sort of boots on the street sort of thing.
Yeah,
I thought that was a good idea, and they set up Cherry's character fair enough. It's all right. And I thought he was decent enough performance. Apparently, he modelled it on Roy Scheider from The French Connection. I didn't see too much of that, but maybe I'm being unfair. Maybe I've not seen the best of the performance. But I have hopes. I hope Cherry survives.
I would like for him to have a bit more to do, but in the same, I think goes for Kirsten as well. I think interesting idea, but she is in the end is given nothing to do, like literally nothing to do.
Nothing. No.
Like I can't stress that enough. It's a character like you cut any the scenes with these guys out. Actually, Cherry has a couple of exposition lines that are important, but sadly
Well,
Kirsten doesn't. And I'm like,
once
God,
Kirsten
that
set
sucks.
once Kirsten sets up the blind date in the coffee shop, she's done, isn't
Yes.
she?
Yeah. Yeah. And
No.
it's like, oh, thought you're gonna like do something with this, but no, you're not.
No.
That is a shame. And but the show and I think when we were watching, my wife made this comment about White Tiger. They just
Mm.
sort of gloss over what his superpower sort of is, and she's like, "What? What? He has powers? What's going on?" And I just because I'm a comic book nerd, I just sort of went with it. I don't know White Tiger very well, so I'm not like an aficionado. But I just thought, yeah, we're in a Marvel world. He's representing a superhero guy. Blah blah blah. So they're
Mm.
just brushing over this, and you just have to accept it. But I didn't really think about it too much from like the layperson watching, being like, "What's this about? A medallion? What? Who?
Yeah, I was like you.
What does the medallion let him do?" You know?
Yeah. Yeah, well, I had a foot in both camps really with you,
Mm,
with you and your because I let it pass me by, but for a different reason. Because I was thinking, who's this? What's this bloke do? And
yeah.
because I don't know him from my comic reading ended, I don't know, 30 years ago.
Mm,
So I didn't know him. So I was a bit like your wife was saying, what?
yeah.
Who's this? And then I thought, fuck it. If I need to know, they'll tell me. So
Yes.
then I fell into your camp of just like, I'll just let it wash over me and, worry about it if it comes up later.
Yeah. It's frustrating because I ended up really liking his niece. I can't remember her name now. Um but
um,
the character who played White Tiger's niece. I thought, oh, because she's kind of coming back, and I thought, okay, is this going to be the drive of the series? White Tiger was murdered by the police that are kind of turned into a Punisher cult, and that's what's going to bring Punisher back into this. Is going to stop these people,
yeah,
and that kind of becomes the hint of what's going to happen. But then even that doesn't really happen either.
no,
Uh,
no,
Sadly, they sort of
no.
after that
It's called
scene where
Angela.
White Tiger yeah, after the scene where White Tiger gets shot in the head and Matt an episode later does a little bit of PI work to sort of find the bullet that has and then confronts Punisher. In a scene
Yeah,
that is fantastic. That scene between Matt and Punisher
it's brilliant.
is great.
Yeah,
I
brilliant.
loved that scene. There's a moment in it where Matt calls Matt calls a Punisher a victim, and he's like, "Don't put that word in my mouth."
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
love that, and I love that for one particular reason, and that is there's so much emphasis on people like almost chasing victimhood, wanting to be a victim. You see it a lot on social media, like somehow someone is a victim through something, and at some point it's like, do you want to be seen as a victim? I don't want to be seen as a victim.
No, no,
I don't want to be a victim. I was like, yeah, it's like it was an interesting bit of commentary between those two characters that I sort of like that bit of dialogue. But but back to the Punisher cult thing. But after that, like just sort of goes away until the final episode where they sort of tie it up.
sort of tie it up again. Yeah, the final
But
episode does a lot of heavy lifting.
that does, geez, it does.
You know, for a 54-minute or whatever it is TV episode, that does a hell of a lot of work.
Yes, it makes you feel like these plot lines had like were more heavily explored
Yeah,
than what really happened in the
yeah,
in the
yeah,
overall show.
yeah. It's all wrapped up very quickly in that last episode. I mean, very enjoyably, and
Yes.
in a way, very well. Because it does heavy lifting, but it does it well. It manages to succeed, even if it's on its knees afterwards. But uh, yeah, the scene with Murdoch and the Punisher, and also the scene with Murdoch and Fisk in the diner.
That's great.
Those that the sort of heat moment. Those are where this really shines and really crackles. And what it does is highlight how off the off bits are.
Yeah.
And when the tonal shifts are really obvious. But I just want to caveat that by saying we are sort of shitting on this series a little bit, but there are problems with it. But I still think overall, it's at its worst, it's better than most of the stuff that we get.
It is, yeah.
From some of these studios.
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, we can talk about more things that we liked, I suppose, which I'm fine with. So like one thing I was impressed with is, I mean, I like the Mayor Fisk comic book. That storyline. That's a very fun storyline. It was the Mayor Fisk storyline was written as a reaction to what was going on back in Trump's first run.
Yeah.
So, it's not that we're massively political on this podcast, but it's crime fiction. Crime fiction is political. There's always a commentary going on, and Born Again is absolutely commenting on what Trump was wanting to do, and as coincidence would have, is now doing while this show is coming out. And it's a bit scary, and some of it's a bit on the nose, like the bit where Fisk is eating a cheeseburger and stuff like that. Okay, whatever. But I, when we were watching these first couple of episodes, my wife was like, how could someone like Fisk become mayor? Like, I don't believe that. I was like, Claire, like,
look who's
president of the United States. That's how. How. And if you're paying attention to what was happening in the first 3 seasons on Netflix, he was always headed towards this.
Yeah, that's the sensation I get. That's the feeling I get. He was always, his mission throughout that was to clean up the city.
Yeah.
And the old writing adage of no one is the villain of their own story really applies to Fisk. He thinks he's doing good, and just that he has to do certain nasty things in order to achieve that greater good. Same as Daredevil does. But he thinks he's acting at one point, I think he says, we both want the same thing, and Daredevil says, I'm nothing like you, and you think, well,
see, I think Fisk is lying. I do think Fisk is lying. I think Fisk says that to the public, and I think maybe he's lied to himself so much that he believes it. But I think all he really wants is complete and utter control.
Complete control.
Trump doesn't want to make America great. He wants to be a dictator.
Yeah, I think
that's the thing, and that's the similarities between them that I thought was. I gotta be honest. I was sort of nervous, thinking, I don't know if Disney, Marvel, Daredevil has the balls to really tackle this well, where Netflix Daredevil did a very good job with some of their commentary, but I think they did an impressive job with how they portrayed Fisk as this Trumpian nut job.
Yeah, I think so. And you might be right that he's told so many lies he doesn't know what's true and what isn't himself. But I agree he wants control. But I think I think part of him does believe that he wants to make it a better place. But of course, that is what Trump believes.
That's what he
believes it, and Fisk can fix it.
Yeah,
as a slogan is, I mean, that's a bit on the nose, isn't it? I don't see.
I loved it though.
Yeah,
I did like.
Yeah, I don't see how you can sort of argue that it isn't an analogy. Really.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
When you've got things like that, although they do deny it, don't they? The writers do deny it, or they did at one point. But
well,
who's going to come out and say it? God.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing that I thought was great was Daniel, the character of Daniel Blake, played by
Yeah,
Michael Godolphini, whatever his
Goldolfini.
name is. Gold, yeah, that guy.
It's what's
Uh,
his name's son, isn't it? It's Tony Soprano's son, I think.
yes, yes, yes. So I thought he was, of all the new characters, he is by far the one that is the most realized.
Yeah,
And I
and
don't
I
know
love
if they gave him more, or if in the reshoots or whatever they were able to kind of amp him up because I will admit I liked him and I also liked Sheila, Fisk's PR person or whatever
the
whatever
PR person.
whatever
Yeah,
whatever
yeah,
she is.
yeah.
She's got a small role, but it's fleshed out enough that I'm like, oh cool. And then when she turns out to be on Fisk's side at the end, you're like, "Oh,
Mm.
okay, crap. I thought you were like, shit. Okay, right. You're crazy." But back to Daniel, the character of Daniel Blake, he
I
was a
love his
really
introduction. I love his
yes.
introduction.
It's a
When
very,
even Fisk is impressed with him,
yes.
and almost sort of stunned into silence with this uh, brash, arrogant enthusiasm that
Yes.
Blake has. Because he says, I think his first line is, "I'm sorry, he's right and you're wrong." To Sheila, say
Yeah.
you've got to do this. This is what you've got to do. People are listening, and Fisk
Yes.
is really sort of taken aback, and
Mm,
it's a great introduction to a character who then
yeah.
goes on to be one of the more interesting of the new
Mm. So I don't
generations.
know if Fisk is necessarily taken aback in that moment. So my reading on that is Fisk is realizing the kind of person that follows him. In the
I
same
think.
way that Trump understands the people that follow him.
Oh yeah, I think what
And
I mean by taken aback is he's sort of bursting into the conversation that up until
yeah,
that point he's
sure.
not been. There's a bit of a maybe it's not taken
Yeah.
aback. Maybe it's a who the fuck do you think you are moment. But then he
Mm,
starts to listen and then he sees,
yeah,
and then he starts to understand.
because that was something I really was I was really interested with his character, and that is he is the representation of I mean, we just recently recorded an episode on, In a Lonely Place. I'm not gonna spoil our thoughts here, but
No,
that is an episode all about, that the lost male in today's society. We talked
yeah,
a little bit about that. And where do these people go? There's the people talking about that show Adolescence on Netflix that is, about some boy who murders a kid another kid at school or something like that, and there's a sort of YouTube element, kind of brainwash element to the narrative apparently. And then then there's these articles out there saying, oh, schools are going to make boys watch this show to show them how they
yeah.
how bad they can be, and so there's an interesting commentary going on in this show that is looking at why these kinds of people are so swept up
Yeah,
in a Fisk, in a Trump. And I think this character of Daniel Blake is so fascinating in the way he comes across as not for a while he doesn't really come across as a nasty person. You're kind of like, you seem like a nice guy.
yeah,
Why are you, what is going on with you? Like, "Bleh." But then you realize, he is a lost guy. He is thirsty for power.
yeah,
He has bought into the lie that Fisk is out to help people. He's not. Fisk is out to help himself.
yeah.
And this is what is so and so I was impressed with him. In terms of the new people,
He was a
Sheila and
standout.
Daniel Blake are the ones that I'm like, okay, this is where I'm loving the new stuff.
Yeah,
Uh, you know,
I agree. I agree entirely. He's one of the standout characters of the new breed.
yeah,
Um, and and you're right. He is representative of a certain cross section of society.
mm,
Certainly in America, and to a certain extent in Britain.
well, here too, yeah,
So uh, a fascinating addition to the Daredevil canon, I think, and one that he really works. The performance is great as well.
Yes. So Vinci in the chat says, "Isn't Muse immortal in the comics?" I don't remember. No way they just killed him like that. Too underutilized as a character. They could have done a better job with Muse. They could have done a better job with
Could have
Muse.
done a better job with Muse.
I agree. I think he's the victim of this this overhaul, this rewrite that sort of probably placed what would have been either the midway point of the season, back by a couple of episodes so that they could,
Yeah,
come in and amp up the Fisk stuff and the Fisk's vigilante task force and all that kind of stuff.
yeah, I think that's right. That's right, and it does suffer for it.
Yeah.
It does suffer for it, but I think he's underused. But he wouldn't have been underused in the original plotline.
Probably not. Probably not. But who knows?
Well, I don't know, but I suspect not.
Yeah, I guess I'm looking at it from like if like the original creative team from Netflix were doing the Muse stuff, he would have been great. I don't know if he would have been necessarily great in given what we saw of episode 5.
No, well, no, we would have seen more of him, but I don't think he would have been as powerful as a presence as he should be. Because that's one of my things. That's one of my takeaways of this series. It's very much a diluted version of the Netflix series.
Yes. Now there is trying to find it if I can. There's a moment in the Mayor Fisk comic where Daredevil is like, "You're right. This shit's gone far enough. I'm taking Fisk down. I'm taking him down."
Yeah.
And we sort of get to that point at the end of episode 9, and I was like, "All right, here we go. Again, overhaul, blah 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 blah. I understand problems there, but there was one perfect way to end this season, and they nearly had it. And it's that final scene when Karen and Matt are in Josie's and they're talking. And then he puts his mask on, she stands up, she opens the door, and there's a group of people in there. You can't see who they are at first.
Yeah.
And I had a budding moment of excitement thinking, they're going to bring Jessica Jones back. You're going to see Luke Cage is going to be in there. Like, they're bringing back they need to bring back the fucking Defenders because that is who you fucking need for this. I was all excited. And then I was like, oh, it's just fucking Cherry and that other police lady who isn't a character either. And all these people who aren't characters.
Yeah.
We're the army. Oh boy.
Yeah. Some of which I didn't recognize, I have to say.
Yeah. I was expecting because there was a moment where Karen was moving across the room, and there was someone sitting on the bench, and I thought it sort of had a Jessica Jones look to her. I thought, oh, fuck, they got her back, and then I was like, oh, it's just that police lady. All right, I don't even know her name. Like, she's in the bank heist episode, and then she's got like one other speaking line during the Muse stuff, but then it's one of those scenes where like Kingpin is so in his head that the noise muffles out so you don't actually hear what so it's like she's had like nothing. She tells one dumb bad joke.
I can't even. Oh, is she the one that tells the awful joke at the? Yeah, she called.
I can't remember her name, but and I'm not going to strain over it either because she's not a character, so it's annoying. It's like,
she's not. She's a name. Yeah, she's a name we can't remember.
Yes. It's like, that sucks.
Yeah, but again, it's sort of, it's all sort of summing up what I think about this, and that is, well, close but no cigar, nearly.
We're
nearly there.
Yeah,
and I blame the overhaul. Well, no, say I blame the overhaul. I'm grateful. God help me, for the overhaul. Because I think what we would have got otherwise would have been really, really bad. But I wish that they just I wish they pulled it complete, been able to pull it completely and start again from scratch. But
Yeah.
I realize that's a forlorn hope. But
Yes.
given its problems, which are obvious, it it couldn't ever be any more than close but no cigar for me. And I think that I don't really say that as a criticism. I say it
Mm.
had an almost impossible hill to climb.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I also wonder whether the expectation and the hope for it and the hype for it was so intense and so elevated
Mm.
that it was never really going to meet expectations anyway. You know, I do have a feeling about that. And with the
Eh.
problems on top, I think it comes out as good as you could expect it to be. I think that's how I'm going to sum up my
Yeah.
feelings about it.
Yeah. I think that's probably fair. You know, given everything that happened leading up to it and during it, and what the
Yeah,
final result is, given all that kind of stuff. I mean, I can honestly, generally, the last two episodes are really really good. I
really
know I'm
good.
dogging
Yeah,
on that
really good.
last scene there because I'm like, oh, I got a room full of nobodies, but
Yeah,
but it's
yeah.
still a
Those are like
Matt's
minor.
speech
Those are
and
sort of minor
Matt's
itches, aren't they? That you
goal
can't
there is
scratch.
like such a
Yeah,
fantastic thing that I'm like, I'm behind you, Matt. I'm behind Daredevil in that moment. So I'm like,
yeah,
even though I don't care about anyone in the room, I'm behind Daredevil and I want to see him take this stuff on and do something with it.
yeah, and do something with it. Yeah, and you know, I was like you. I don't really care who was in the foreground. I was literally behind him, and
Mm,
really and you know silently cheering him on, saying, "Yeah, come on," because he gives what a pretty good speech about, you know, this is
mm,
up to us and we can do it together. And I like the fact that it's showing different sides of New York society. So when he
mm,
says we, he means the community.
yeah.
You know, I thought that
Hey,
was
it's like
pretty.
Spider-Man 2 or is it Spider-Man 1? Hey, this is New York. You mess with one of us, you mess
Yeah,
with all of us.
yeah. I can't bear that line. I hate that. I went every time I watched that film. I went through a stage of muting that line.
Yeah, it's Spider-Man 1. Yeah, it's the bridge scene. It's the
It's
bridge
Spider-Man
scene.
one. It's on the
Spider-Man 1.
it's the cable car thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
But yeah, yeah. But I mean, it was that same sentiment, but done much better
Mm.
for
Yes.
me.
Yes. Yes.
Although it
Yes.
was a little bit like, you know, movie Batman is often prone to giving these sort of speeches. You
Yes.
know that, and I was reminded of the Nolan trilogy a couple of times in terms of what they were the message, because at one point
Mm,
somebody, I think it's Murdoch himself, says, you know, we can bring the city back.
mhm.
You know, and that's pretty much what, you know. I think Batman says we
That's
can
that
bring
Batman
Gotham
Begins, I
back.
think, isn't it? Yeah.
Batman Begins, yeah.
Mm. Yeah.
But but I can live, you know, fair enough.
Yeah.
They are
Yeah.
sort of on the same mission to clean up the city they hold dear. So, you know, I can live with that. That's not a criticism either. That's just a resonance, you know, in my head that I had. But I liked that final speech, and I like that final closing montage. I thought it was quite well
Mm.
done.
Yeah. Vinci says only thing the Muse's character influence was Heather's perception about vigilantes. It was an unsatisfactory end to the Muse character. I don't disagree. I
I don't
completely
disagree with that either. I think that's dead right. I
it
think that's
was.
dead right.
All right, I said it twice.
Yeah,
Yes.
dead
No,
right.
no, I completely
I
agree.
think that's
Yep,
dead
yep, yep,
right.
yep, yep.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And
Um,
another sort of another sort of misfire I thought was the character of BB Urich.
yeah,
I love Ben Urich in that first season, and I was so
so
pissed
do
off
I.
when they killed him. I was
When they
so
killed him
pissed
off,
off that they killed him
I was
because God, he was great. He was just everything about the actor, the character was so good.
spot
And
on.
yes, and I was initially intrigued by the character of BB because I thought, oh,
Mhm.
okay, I like this. You know, sure, it's been a few years. This kid's grown up. You know, she's doing her own little TikTok like news stuff,
Yeah,
whatever, interviewing you. Oh, yeah, that's kind of cool. But basically, when all she was really used for was just these talking head moments of various people in New York,
yeah,
They just kept going and kept going and kept going. I thought, cut this crap. This is the crap you need to cut out.
Yeah. Well,
Cut
again,
out these people, these talking heads, and give Cherry and Kirsten something to do.
something to do. Yeah, absolutely. 100% agree
Like,
with
come
that.
on.
But again, this is the sort of thing I expect to see in a kids show.
Yes, or give BB something to do, for crying out
Give
loud. She
BB
doesn't.
something.
She
Give
doesn't really
somebody
come
something to
into.
do.
Yeah, she doesn't really come into her own until these last couple of episodes, where she's like, "Yeah, I know." Basically, like, because you're sort of like, what is her deal? She wants to get in on Fisk, and then she's being really friendly with Daniel Blake, and you're like, uh, where is this meant to go? Is
Yeah.
she on? And then it's finally at the end of the show, like, she wants to pin Urich's murder on Fisk. Okay, fine, we got there, but there wasn't any sense of intrigue with her
No.
character,
No.
because it's funny that her first scene with Fisk, where she's like, I want to ask you a question. She talks at Fisk and at no point actually asks him a question.
That's true. Yeah, that is also true.
And I was like, oh,
Yeah,
you're
really.
not as good as reported as your uncle.
And you see, as character subplot goes, that's a good one.
Yes.
I want to pin Ben's murder. Uncle Ben is murder
Yeah.
on Fisk, and I will set out to do that. That's a good one.
Definitely.
But again, it's just not developed. It's waste, and I blame what we've been blaming all along. But you're right. You can save a lot of screen time by cutting out fake mobile phone images of people being interviewed in the street or whatever it is, and have us go with her. Have her interview people properly and find information out. Because one of the things I liked about the original series, certainly the first series of the original run, was that there was a PI element to it, that Murdoch was finding information out. He was following clues. He was following leads. And, he was taking down the Russians, but getting information from them that were eventually leading him to the top of the corruption,
Yeah.
And we know there's noir all over. There isn't so much of that in this. There's much less of that. People just seem to know things or are told things.
Yeah.
And I miss that. I miss that sort of him using his wits as well as his fists.
Yes.
Which I think is important. Otherwise, he is just everything that Heather thinks he is. And we get some of it, I suppose, but
not
nowhere
as
near
much.
enough of it. Nowhere near enough of it for my liking.
I would say the most noir part of Born Again probably stems more from Fisk. The gangster element
side.
is
the
that where
side, definitely.
I agree. I miss, again, that's what I loved about all three seasons really is Matt is figuring stuff out, Foggy's figuring stuff out, Karen is figuring, they're all investigating.
They're all investigating. Yeah.
They're all they're all trying to do something along those lines. Then you get your comic book element in there as well, but that was and again, this is where it's like you have the White Tigers stuff. You have Foggy's death, then you have the White Tiger case, then White Tiger's dead, and then he doesn't really do much to follow up on the White Tiger stuff, because then he takes some other case, and there's a whole episode about that guy wanting parole or wanting fewer days in jail, and he wastes a lot of time. There's that, I think it's like the second or third episode, where he wastes a lot of time on some guy who is, and the guy's just there to give a sob speech to be like, "Oh, life is tough for me." It's like, yeah, you are a criminal.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
It's I'm sorry you got busted for eating some cereal, and that sucks. You don't deserve that, maybe, but that doesn't negate the fact that you're still a criminal and you still miss your parole and you still like you're still a criminal, man.
So shut up.
Yeah, there was a bit of like, oh, we need Matt needs to sympathize with this guy because life's so bad. I'm like, no, sorry, that doesn't work for me.
No.
But it's like, why are we wasting time on this when he should be looking into who shot and murdered White Tiger?
White Tiger, yeah, exactly. Oh, yeah, and he should have Cherry on that. Cherry should be investigating that at street level.
Yes.
And
Yes.
give him Matt lead, saying, "Well, I think it's something to do with this," so that Matt can then go out in his suit, his costume at night and beat the crap out of some people to find out if that is the truth, and then
Mhm.
follow the
What
lead. You know, that's
what I would love to know is if the White Tiger death and the Punisher cult were additions.
mm,
Because he gets him off, and I could see him getting off. I could see White Tiger getting away and, going off to go be a little vigilante out there. I could see that being a thing, because
yeah,
also the actor did sadly die. He
he
had
did,
cancer, and
unfortunately,
he
yeah,
and he passed. And I feel like an idiot for not knowing his name off the top of my head, but yes. Um, so
yeah,
I
he
I
did, unfortunately.
there is a part of it's like, I wonder if the death was, I don't know. I don't know. If someone knows, let me know, because I'd be interested to know.
I
Was
well,
that when they're revamping stuff? Well, what if we kill him off, and then the guy who kills him off is part of a Punisher cult, and that's what spurs Matt to go find Daredevil, find Punisher, and we that's how we can bring Punisher back in a way that you know
I think
John Bernthal will
that's what
like.
I think the key is. I think you just hit the nail on the head. I think that
Mm,
when they're revamping it, they say we can't just have this story about Hush and White Tiger. We need to bring back all the people that the fans are expecting to see,
mm,
and that includes Punisher. So how do we get Punisher back? Well, I know
yeah.
we kill off this fella. That's what we do because we don't want him anyway. So yeah, I can see that being a
Mm,
not necessarily a shoehorn in of Frank Castle, but more a preference for him than the villains that we've got, or
mm,
anti-heroes that we've got, vigilantes that we've got. And so we take one out in a way that allows us to bring the preferred one in. I,
yeah.
I can
Yeah.
I can I can see that happening.
Yeah, because I could also see, like, okay, well, if they do that, well, then maybe they just filmed a new scene with the girl who plays the niece, and she comes to the hospital. She dumps a couple exposition lines to sort of hint at where Muse might be, and then suddenly she's abducted by Muse a couple episodes later, and then
Yeah,
he rescues her, takes Muse out, but then we don't really see anything of her again. Like, so I feel like they used her, like, she was used so sparingly that I thought, was she just is she brought in? It's hard to tell. It's hard to
it's hard
tell,
to
but
tell.
I would love to know. I would love to know, but that's the impression I sort of get with some of this, and that's why there's not a serious investigation into the Punisher cult, because it was, again, speculate that's the thing that was tacked on. That's the thing they can add a lot of extra stuff to as
Yeah,
they're
yeah.
reshooting.
I sort of go along with that. I sort of go
Mhm.
along. I think this overhaul, whilst absolutely necessary, let's be under no illusion about that, because otherwise we'd have had 18 episodes of the bank heist quality. So it was absolutely necessary, but it causes problems,
Mm,
and the ripple effect of it is something they almost can't stop. You know,
yeah.
but again, I'd rather watch this than almost every other um, sort of Marvel product,
No, I
pretty
agree. I
much.
mean, we've been critical, but I think that, like I said, the a big takeaway is that, as complicated and problematic as the narrative structure is to this, it is actually a miracle that it's even as good as it is, because it is generally good. It is
It is
generally good.
genuinely good. It is
And
surprisingly genuinely good.
yes. And a hopeful sign for me about series 2 is, initially these 18 episodes were meant to be sort of this episodic procedural stuff. Season 2 is not, it's picking up threads from
Yeah,
series 1, but it's a fresh story. So the vibe I'm getting from what I'm reading and seeing online is that they are hopefully putting in the effort to series 2 to have a smoothed, coherent series that is not going to be as clunky or as patchworked as what Born Again
Well,
was.
I mean, it can't be. I don't think it can't be.
Mm.
But I hope it is everything that we hope it is,
I do too.
and
I do too.
everything it deserves to be, really. Because I think
Mm.
this is by no means a sorry return. Some things come back after a number of years, and you wish they hadn't. And I don't feel like that at all. I'm glad this is
Mm.
back, and I think
Yeah.
it's come back with with a vengeance. Really, it's just that it's been the victim of its own genesis and its
Yeah.
own and its own
Well, it's the
production.
victim of the Marvel have always been dicks to the Netflix shows, and I do
Yeah,
not know why. I don't understand why. When they were on, they just pretended like they didn't exist in the movies for some reason. And went so far as to basically say that, oh well, they're not really actually fully a part of this. But then the Netflix shows would then subtly reference things that were happening in the wider universe.
yeah.
And so it's like I for the life of me, I could never understand why the main MCU
I
viewed these things that are fantastic. Like
yeah.
all 3 seasons of Daredevil are great. Jessica Jones is solid. Season 1 of Luke Cage is great. Okay, yeah, Iron Fist is crap, but whatever. But you have a lot of really good stuff over there on Netflix. And because I remember when like Civil War was happening, I thought you need to have a scene with these guys somewhere.
Yeah.
You know, even at a distance, something. Daredevil fighting on a rooftop, something.
Something.
And they just
Something.
ignored it.
Yeah.
And then even in the in-game, stuff, I'm like, something.
I
But
agree.
they went so they really pushed these people uh, out of the main storyline, and their whole thing was like, oh, that's why they're like, oh, we can just reboot Daredevil and bring it back, and blah, blah, blah. No, that's not what people wanted. And it's
No.
a Daredevil and these Netflix shows are a good example of how you can have your action comedies, which are basically what the Marvel films are action comedies. You can have your action comedies, but in your same universe, you can also have something over here that's dark and gritty and fun for adults, you know?
Yeah.
And then you can have
Yeah.
your little teen bop show that's Miss Marvel for, these teens who want to watch that stuff. Then you can
For
have
the
that over
teams
there as well.
yeah, you can have it all. You can have it all.
It's exactly like the comics.
Yeah. Yeah, you can have it all. Because these all these heroes are facing different problems, aren't they? So Daredevil is in Hell's Kitchen and he is facing essentially gangsters and corruption and violence. You know.
Mhm,
Now
mhm.
Iron Man can go to space and fight aliens. Good stuff. You know,
Yes.
there's no way Daredevil can get to space, is there, for heaven's sake? So, let's they can all exist and have different threats that will require different levels of violence and you know
Yeah,
and comedy. You know, I
definitely.
you know, I just don't really see what the problem is.
No,
you know,
so I mean, that was the thing that Marvel wanted to cut these guys off and pretend like they were never even a part of their universe, and fans pushed back enough, and the actors pushed back enough, and it's like, yeah, this is what people wanted. They wanted this to be in the universe. They wanted to, and they
yeah,
wanted it to continue. Like,
and
s-
and like I
God,
said before, I credit to them for listening because too often they don't.
yeah,
And too often they think they know better than the audience, and
yes,
they don't. They don't, because
sometimes,
the
absolutely,
audience are the ones that are paying. So
yes,
they're where the money is, and if
yes.
you don't give them what they want, customer is king.
Yeah,
So
and I mean, it does make me wonder if how much of the how much of the listening to the reactions were to do with are these shows, how often or how much are people watching some of the Marvel shows? They come and go pretty quickly without very much fanfare now. Um,
mm,
at least where I'm concerned. But I don't know.
I'm me. I'm me. I'm me.
Vinci says also, why did Pal kill off Hector though? I'm assuming it was Pal who killed Hector Elia. But again, it was vaguely answered. I don't know.
Yeah, this is one of
The
the. I think
motive is unclear.
the motive is unclear, and again, it's a question that. It's
Well,
one of those questions where I thought, well, maybe they must explain this later, and by the time it's finished, you've sort of forgotten about it. But
yeah,
I can't think of. I couldn't think what the motive was.
yeah. The motive I think was just the fact that he got away, that he got
Mm,
off, that they weren't able to frame him, and stitch him up for killing this cop.
for killing the other cop.
Yeah. So I think that's the motive for killing him more than anything. Um, you know,
I mean, that would make sense, but
we're gonna look after our own kind of thing. Blah blah blah. I
yeah,
think
that
that's
would
where
make.
they
But
went with
I
this.
think it's an important plot point that it shouldn't leave you to guess about. I think it should have been made clearer.
Yeah, yeah. And I think part of the maybe part of the confusion is that in that really fun fight sequence in Matt's house with Punisher and the
Oh yeah,
vigilante task force, um, Punisher picks up the bullet and says, "Oh, you found your guy." He says, "You found your guy,"
mm.
but it's the actor, the black guy actor. I can't remember his character's name. Damn it, uh, he's not he's not the one. He's not Powell, is he? Powell's the one who when Daredevil is not Daredevil, when Punisher is at their kind of little base, is the one who's like asking him to join the team. That's Powell,
That's Powell.
right?
I think so.
The
Yeah,
person
yeah.
who shot he's likely the one who shot White Tiger. I'm pretty sure he's the one who shot White. No, is he? Is he actually? Hang on. There's that scene. There's a scene where Daredevil listens to the guy to his heartbeat and acts like he doesn't know what happened to him. So maybe it's not. I'm getting confused.
Yeah, I
I'm
can't
getting confused.
remember, to be honest.
But the main point is White Tiger's death is a little murky, and who did it is sort of murky. But it all stems from the Punisher cult of them wanting to
That
seek justice for what was done to their fallen comrade, I suppose. Um, but
yeah,
it is vague who did it and fully why.
yeah, it is vague, and like I say, I don't think it should be as vague as it is. I think we
Yeah,
should get some sort of resolution to that.
yeah. I don't
Um,
think we will. I don't think we will
I
because
don't think we will.
so many of those
Again,
characters died.
at the risk of
Nice
being, at the
story.
risk of sounding like a broken record, I think it's a victim of the big problem we've talked about.
Yeah,
You know,
and from what I can see, season 2 is moving on. It's moving on. So I don't. It's not going to be focusing on too many threads from series 1, which I
no,
think is honestly probably a smart idea.
yeah, I do. I think this is, you know, this has got a series 2. Let's look forward to series 2 and just accept that this was what it was.
Yeah.
You know, it it comes with issues. There's no denying that it comes with
A shaky
issues.
reboot, or a shaky, not a reboot, but I guess it's sort of a reboot, a shaky reboot.
Yeah, yeah, and it does leave questions. I mean, there's no denying that. And it leaves you to piece some things together, which I don't have a problem with. But there are certain things that you shouldn't have to piece together, and the motive for a murder is one of them. You know,
Hmm. You know what might be a really good comparison to this is Star Trek V, The Final Frontier.
well,
Arguably
I mean,
the worst.
I bow to your superior knowledge of Star Trek Five.
Okay. It's arguably the worst of the original of the TOS films, TOS crew films. It's the one where Spock's brother Cybok comes in and he, is share your pain with me and
Right,
all that sort of stuff. And it's the one that Shatner directed and didn't do a very good job.
Shatner
But
directed.
Yeah,
Wow.
well, it was his stipulation because Nimoy got to direct a couple, so he wanted to direct one, so he got Star Trek 5.
Yeah, but Nimoy can
And
direct.
no. No, he can't. He can act, but he can't direct. Um, and but as for all of its warts, it is actually a very interesting and very Star Trek story, and that is Spock's half brother Cybok is essentially an analogy of televangelism,
Oh, right. Okay.
which was big at the time when Star Trek
Yeah.
5 was coming out. And he's very much Cybok is manipulating people and bringing these people onto his cause and basically sort of creating this sort of um I don't know, dangerous, almost cult like thing. And so it has a lot of interesting, things to say about contemporary society or what was happening at that particular time. And I think that's sort of what Daredevil's like. It's clunky. Born Again is it's clunky, but you are in the presence of characters and actors that you like and you want to hang out with, so you sort of overlook some of these blemishes.
Yeah.
And at the same time, through the clunkiness, the thing does have something interesting to say
To say.
about
Yes.
where
Yes.
we are as a society right now, where we are politically right now, and therefore is worth your time and worth your energy,
It
and
is worth the
yeah.
time and energy because I didn't. I mean, apart from the bank episode, I didn't feel at any stage. Oh, this is. I can't watch any more of this.
No, absolutely not. No, I was
Quite the
genuinely
opposite.
excited for
Quite the
every
opposite.
episode. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, what's going to happen next? Skip number 5. Can't wait to see what's happening next. So
Yes.
um, so I think it succeeds overall. I think it succeeds. It just has a few issues that now I don't think can be fixed. But they're itches that I can't scratch rather than fatal.
Yeah.
I can
Definitely.
sort of
Definitely.
I can live with them. I
Yeah.
can live with them.
Definitely, definitely. And Vincy asks, going off topic, but where are we streaming from? The UK, London, and Manchester is where we are.
Yeah.
I'm London, Matt's Manchester.
I'm Manchester.
Because speaking of which, that's the thing. Like this, and I one thing I gotta give Disney credit for is they release these episodes at like 7 o'clock at night
Hmm.
in the US.
Yeah.
And I thought, I mean, it's hilarious that after all this streaming, after all this, we're gonna dump a whole series on one day,
Yeah.
and then everyone has to binge it, the whole binging model. And we've just gone back to cable TV. We've just gone back to appointment television. Thursdays at 7 o'clock. Star Trek: The Next Generation. Find out what happens when Picard. Blah 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 blah. Blah.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it's literally we've gone back to that. But I liked it because I thought, oh my god, it's great because I can wake up in the morning and I can watch an episode. I watch it in the morning because I don't want to see spoilers on social media. But I thought that is so good that you can just it's like at night. People are watching it at night, at least in the States, at 7 o'clock, whatever. It goes live. You watch your show, and then you watch the program, and
Yeah.
then you go and talk about it with your friends for the next week. And what happens? It stays in your mind for longer.
Stays
And
in
what
your mind for
happens?
longer.
That fucking buzz on the internet
Yeah.
stays for longer
Yeah.
because you got a whole week worth of articles about one episode,
One
and you
episode.
have that for 9 weeks.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It stays in your mind longer. And it's what they used to call the water cooler moment, where everyone
Yes.
would meet and work the next day and talk about it over
Mm.
pretending to get water from the water cooler, but really they were talking about last night's episode.
Yes. 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 Exactly.
It's great. Great. I miss those days. I
Mm.
miss those days.
I mean, it seems like they're coming back. I mean, a lot of streaming shows are doing the episodic thing, and I appreciate it. And I'm like, cool. I'm cool with it because there's
Yeah.
just also when you're competing with so many other shows and films and things, it's like,
Well, it's like I said at the outset, if if all you do is stream box sets, when do you do anything else?
Exactly.
You know, people. I'm sure there are people who just spend all day watching TV. You know, and I can't.
Probably.
I can't. I've got a friend who often texts me and says, "I was watching this last night." And I think, when did you have time? Because you were watching
Mm.
something else yesterday.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
you watch the whole series in one day, it's nuts. You know, it's nuts.
Yes. Yes. It's
What
it's
else do
it's
you
nuts,
do?
and it's also frustrating because the binge model almost forced everyone to binge because you didn't want spoilers, but you
No.
also wanted to be in the conversation, and it's yeah.
Yeah.
So I hats off to I like this 7 o'clock on a whatever Wednesday or Tuesday night. I
Yeah. Me too.
appreciate that. I appreciate
Yeah.
that.
More of it, please. More of it, please.
Yeah. Because a lot of my other shows that I enjoyed, things like Bosch Legacy, that's episodic, that's weekly. Slow Horses,
Mhm.
weekly. Thank God for Apple doing this as well. It's just easier to digest, and
Well,
yeah.
especially if some of the, if the show is quite intensive, then um, sometimes you need a break.
I was gonna say sometimes you do.
You
Yes,
know,
I agree.
sometimes
Absolutely.
you need a bit of a come down from, either the mind fuckery or the violence or the twists and turns or whatever it is of a really
Yes.
good TV show.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. Well,
Do you have any more to say about Daredevil Born Again?
I don't think I do. I think I've said pretty much all. I'm everything aside, I am also just so happy to see Charlie Cox back as Daredevil
Yeah, yeah,
because I
yeah,
think I think he is a fantastic actor,
yeah,
and he did not deserve for his show to be canceled. And I just uh, it's a joy to see him back in a role that he is fantastic in. It's
yeah.
he was made for this role, and
He was made for this role.
he's great in everything I've seen him in, to be fair. Like I've seen a lot of his films and shows. Kin is a fantastic show that he's in, and it's an Irish show. But yeah, so it's just nice to see them back. There's almost a I'm using Star Trek as an analogy a lot because but it's a bit sort of like Star Trek the motion picture. It's like, I remember these faces. Oh, it's so
Yeah,
good to see these faces
yeah.
again.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, and a bit. Oh, I'd forgotten how good this was.
Yes.
You know, when they're
Yes.
together. Oh, I'd forgotten how good they were together. It's a nice, it's a good comeback. It's a good comeback, and it's a welcome one. And
Yes. And
and
if
given like my, in summary, given its troubles, as you said before, it's impressive that it is as impressive as it is. If that makes sense.
yes. Yes.
You know,
And if for
yeah,
some
great
reason,
job.
somehow Disney are listening to this, lean into your Netflix stuff. Bring back
Yeah,
Jessica Jones. Bring back Claire. You know what I mean? Bring Claire back. Come
yeah.
on. Bring back
Well,
Luke Cage. I don't care about Iron Fist, but
no, no, forget him, forget
bring
him.
back Elektra,
And I would
just do
bring
it. I
back
mean,
bring
Rosaria
back
Dawson.
more
You have
of.
Rosaria Dawson on in your roster, and you're not bringing Rosaria goddamn Dawson back. Bring
Yeah,
Rosaria Dawson
yeah,
back.
bring her back. Definitely, she was
Eh,
brilliant. Um,
Misty Knight. Come on, Misty Knight was fantastic.
whilst
Gorgeous as
the
hell as well.
anybody else, whilst the fights are great in this, I prefer make them more brutal like they were in the first run. I
Yeah.
They're a little bit pulled back. I think they're a little bit toned down. That there's still brilliant choreography and there's still great fun to watch. But I really liked the blood and guts of the first
Yeah,
run.
somewhere someone connected to the Born Again said that these fights are more brutal than anything we've ever seen in Daredevil, and I'm like, I don't
No, they're
believe
not.
you. The most brutal thing was Fisk crushing that guy's head and
Yeah,
seeing it.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
it. But the general fights were on par, on par.
yeah.
And if not a little bit less, as you
I
say,
think a
a
little bit less. I think they were ever so slightly tamer than,
little bit.
and nowhere near as sort of visceral.
Yeah.
We
Yes.
talked the other day about the famous corridor fight in the first series, and it's quite early on in the first series. They've not matched that for my money.
No, that scene is just amazing.
Yeah, it's just brutal. But
Yes.
so I would say that bring all those people back, lean into the, like you say, lean into the next Netflix legacy, and just darken it a bit more for me. And we've got a rollicking series too.
Yes. And as we sort of cap off, one more from Vinci in the chat, though it was an average season, I'm pretty hopeful that they
Yeah,
would make next season a bit more Netflix-ish. Yes. And of
agree with all
course,
that,
more
Vincent.
of the
Agree with all
Punisher.
that.
I mean, actually, Punisher is getting a one shot. Apparently, they're doing it. They're doing
Ah,
a special one off with the Punisher, and I'm like, awesome, do it.
yeah, do
Give
it.
me that. That sounds exciting. But
Yeah,
also, and here's the thing with the Netflix stuff. It's great. All these people having their own shows. It might be a bit too much, but maybe bring these characters back in the way that like Constantine was canceled and then was brought back in all the Arrowverse stuff as a
mm,
supporting character. Bring Jessica Jones in and for a couple episodes every season. Bring Luke Cage in for a couple episodes every season. Let all three of them be together on a mission. Something like that. Or maybe
yeah,
because I tell you what would have been if you were really thinking this through, Disney, the end of Born Again would have led into Defenders season 2
mm,
and then that's where they go and take off, and then you go to Born Again season 2 with takes you off on a new adventure. But
yeah,
like,
yeah.
what a way to easily have smoothly sailed right into a
Right
sequel for
into it. Yeah,
Defenders.
yeah.
You know,
I quite like that idea. Just bring him in for a couple of
it's
episodes
in
and
the
then they're gone.
comic. The comic sets it up. He goes to all of his superhero friends, and he's like, "All right, guys, let's go take down Mayor Fisk." It's you had it there on the page.
It's there on the
It's a
page.
shame.
Yeah.
It's a shame we just don't get that in this final. But who knows? Maybe they'll turn up in the next season.
Well, I hope so.
Anything.
And I'm looking forward to the next series. I'm looking forward to the next series, and I think
Me
it'll
too.
be a marked improvement. But I've just stressed that when this is bad, it's better than most of the stuff that is churned out by these people.
It is one of the things that sort of stands out as like, oh yeah, cool. Like Marvel can still excite me.
Yeah, exactly,
And
exactly.
that's a nice feeling because I love comics. I've got action figures all
Yeah,
over this fucking place. Like
yeah,
uh, yeah, I want to
and they
still
have
love
good
this stuff.
characters. Marvel has good characters that
Mm,
that deserve respect and they deserve good treatment and they deserve to shine in their own right on screen, and that's what Daredevil allows to happen.
yes,
You know,
I agree.
Netflix, and this one.
Mm, defo.
More of him in the suit. That's the other thing I'd say.
Yes. Okay. One last quick complaint, and that is I was a little bit annoyed that we had to kind of go through a mini series 3 arc because all of series 3 he's not in the suit.
No,
He doesn't wear it once. He wears his black suit, which is pretty awesome. I like his
yeah,
I
I
like
like the
his,
black suit.
I like that. But it was sort of like all the black suit for season 1 until the final episode. Little suit is used throughout series 2, but he's out of it a lot, but still in it. None in series 3, and like for most of the defenders, he's not in the suit either. I don't know why they're afraid of the suit, but
Yeah,
it was frustrating that we did have to go through another I'm no longer Daredevil story arc
mm,
with these first 4 episodes. I get it. It's
yeah.
all to do with Foggy. I was ready to move on. And that might also be a symptom of having just binged the show.
Well, you don't know how far that because that's fresh in your mind. You don't know how far
Yeah.
that influences you. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So yeah, but yeah, more of the suit, please. Please, more of the suit. He looks so freaking cool in that suit. It's a good
It
suit.
does. Yeah, it's one of the. Uh, are they rare examples these days? I'm not sure they are these days, but making it look comic accurate, but also functional and believable.
Yeah, I mean, if we're gonna compare this to say like Nolan's Batman, this suit is so much better.
So much better. Yeah, so much better.
Totally buy this. I do not buy Batman's stupid suit in any of those, but yeah, I buy, But I guess this Daredevil suit compared to like the Batman, the what's his face,
Yeah, the Matt Reeves one,
Matt Reeves one,
Robert Pattinson. Yeah,
yeah, Robert Pattinson, yeah. Those are those are cool. That I dig those, but well, I guess we could tell people where to follow us. If you're watching now, well, you're watching on YouTube. If you're watching on the Luke Deckard Show Net channel, go over to Mean Streets where that's our main channel. We chat about film noir, TVs and movies and things like that. And you can follow us on Spotify and Apple and things like that. But also like, subscribe, share. Helps us out. You can
Yeah.
also follow us on social media. We're on X and Blue Sky, Mean Streets Podcast, Film Noir Podcast. We're easy to find, and our personal handles are out there. I'm Luke Wrights Crime, and Matt, you are
I'm
Holmes Booth.
I'm at Holmes Booth on X, and
There we go.
I think I'm Matthew Booth, author on everything else.
There you go. And that's Holmes like Sherlock Holmes.
As in
Holmes
Sherlock
with
Holmes, yeah, not as in moving homes.
No. But there we go. Follow us, hang out with us. We will be back with another live thing at some point in the near future. We don't do these very often. We do these sporadically when there's something of interest that we think is worth our time. But
yeah, something we feel we want to talk about.
Yeah, we'll be back with something at some point. Maybe we'll do a watch along at some point. Who knows? But in the meantime, yeah, thanks for tuning in, and we'll
Thanks
we'll see you
everyone
all
for coming
next
in.
time. See you later,
See you soon.
Vincey and James and Ballerino and anyone else who is watching along the way. We'll see you next time.
See you again.